Hey there, witches and wizards. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most complex and controversial characters in the Harry Potter universe, Percy Ignatius Weasley. Yes, that's right, the third Weasley son who chose ambition over family, who stood with the Ministry when they turned against Harry Potter, and who became the black sheep of the most beloved family in the wizarding world. But is Percy really the villain we think he is, or is there more to his story? Grab your quills and parchment, because we're about to explore the complete journey of Percy Weasley. Let's start at the beginning. Percy Ignatius Weasley was born on August 22, 1976, making him the third son in the Weasley family, named after two heroes of the wizarding world. Percy after his grandfather, and Ignatius, which means fiery in Latin. Percy seemed destined for greatness from the start. But here's where Percy's story gets interesting. Growing up in a family of 7 children, Percy found himself in a unique position. He wasn't the eldest like Bill, who blazed trails as a curse breaker. He wasn't the second son like Charlie, who followed his passion for dragons. Percy was the middle child who had to find his own way to stand out. Picture this: the Burrow, filled with the constant noise of magical mishaps, twin pranks, and general Weasley chaos, while his brothers found joy in Quidditch, pranks, and adventure. Percy found solace in something completely different: order, rules, and achievement. This wasn't rebellion. This was survival. In a family where everyone had their thing, Percy's thing became excellence. Percy arrived at Hogwarts on September 1, 1987, and was sorted into Gryffindor, the same house as every Weasley before him. But Percy's Gryffindor experience was uniquely his own. While his house valued bravery and daring, Percy found his courage in responsibility and leadership. From his very first year, Percy was different. He was the Weasley who followed rules instead of breaking them. He was the one who earned points instead of losing them. And you know what? He was brilliant at it. Percy consistently earned outstanding marks in his studies, particularly excelling in subjects that required precision and dedication. In his 5th year, Percy achieved what many students dream of. He was made a Gryffindor prefect. This wasn't just a badge, it was validation. For the first time, Percy had something that was entirely his own, something that his older brothers hadn't achieved first. As a prefect, Percy took his duties seriously, perhaps too seriously for some people's liking. He patrolled the corridors, enforced rules, and maintained order. His brothers, especially Fred and George, found this insufferable. But here's what we need to understand. Percy wasn't trying to be annoying. He was trying to be excellent. During his 6th year, something significant happened that would shape Percy's entire worldview. The Chamber of Secrets was opened, and Hogwarts was thrown into chaos. While Harry Potter was solving mysteries and fighting basilisks, Percy was watching the adults, the teachers, the Ministry officials, the people in charge, and he was learning that order and authority were what kept people safe. This experience deeply affected Percy. He saw what happened when chaos reigned, when rules broke down, when authority was questioned, and he decided that he never wanted to be part of that chaos. He wanted to be part of the solution. Percy's 7th year at Hogwarts was his crowning achievement. He was named Head Boy, the ultimate student leadership position. This wasn't just an honor. It was Percy's entire identity. He had worked 7 years for this moment, and he had earned it through dedication, hard work, and unwavering commitment to excellence. As Head Boy, Percy was responsible for maintaining discipline, supporting the prefects, and serving as a liaison between students and staff. He took these responsibilities seriously, perhaps more seriously than any head boy before him. But here's the thing. Percy was good at it, really good at it. Percy graduated from Hogwarts with 12 O.W.L.s, an exceptional achievement that spoke to his incredible work ethic and intelligence. But more than that, he graduated with a clear vision of his future. While his brothers chose unconventional paths, Percy had his sights set on the most conventional and prestigious career possible: the Ministry of Magic. In 1994, immediately after graduation, Percy joined the Ministry of Magic in the Department of International Magical Cooperation. This wasn't just any job. This was Percy's dream job. He was finally part of the system he believed in, the authority structure he respected, the order he craved. Percy's early career at the ministry brought him into contact with Bartemius Crouch Sr, head of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. For Percy, Crouch represented everything he aspired to be: powerful, respected, dedicated to the ministry's mission. Percy became Crouch's personal assistant, and this relationship would define the next phase of his life. Percy threw himself into his work with characteristic intensity. He worked long hours, wrote detailed reports, and handled Crouch's correspondence with meticulous care. When Crouch began showing signs of illness and stress, Percy stepped up, taking on more responsibilities and essentially running parts of the department himself. But here's where things get complicated. Percy's loyalty to Crouch was so complete that he couldn't see what others around him were beginning to notice: that something was seriously wrong. Crouch was behaving erratically, missing important events, and sending Percy to represent him at functions he would never normally miss. During the Triwizard Tournament, Percy found himself defending Crouch's reputation, even as evidence mounted that his boss was not in control. When Crouch disappeared entirely, Percy was devastated. His mentor, his role model, the person who represented everything Percy believed about the ministry, gone. This experience shook Percy to his core, but instead of questioning the system, he doubled down on his faith in the ministry itself. If Crouch had failed, it wasn't because the system was flawed, it was because individuals within the system had failed. After Crouch's disappearance, Percy was promoted to Senior Undersecretary to the Minister, working directly for Cornelius Fudge. This was a massive career advancement for someone so young, and Percy saw it as validation of his abilities and dedication. But this promotion came at the worst possible time in wizarding history. Voldemort had returned, but the Ministry, and Fudge specifically, refused to acknowledge this reality. Instead, they launched a campaign to discredit Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore, the two people trying to warn the wizarding world about the danger they faced. Percy found himself at the center of this controversy. As Fudge's right-hand man, he was responsible for implementing policies that targeted Harry and Dumbledore. He helped coordinate the ministry's takeover of Hogwarts, supported the appointment of Dolores Umbridge as High Inquisitor, and defended the ministry's position even as evidence mounted that they were wrong. Now, here's where we need to understand Percy's perspective. He wasn't acting out of malice or evil intent. Percy genuinely believed that the ministry represented order, stability, and the greater good. In his mind, Harry Potter was a teenager making extraordinary claims, and Dumbledore was an aging wizard whose judgment might be compromised. But Percy's faith in the ministry put him on a collision course with his own family. The Weasleys supported Harry and Dumbledore. They joined the Order of the Phoenix, an organization that directly opposed ministry policy. For Percy, this wasn't just a political disagreement, it was a betrayal of everything he believed in. The breaking point came during the Christmas holidays of 1994. Percy received his promotion to Senior Undersecretary, and instead of celebrating, his family expressed concern about his new position. They questioned Fudge's motives, suggested that Percy was being used, and urged him to be careful about his loyalty to the ministry. For Percy, this was the ultimate insult. His family, who had always seen him as the odd one out, were now suggesting that his greatest achievement was actually a manipulation. They were asking him to choose between his career and his principles on one side, and his family on the other. And Percy made his choice. He chose the ministry. In a devastating letter to his brother Ron, Percy wrote that he was breaking ties with his family. He accused his father of disloyalty to the ministry, suggested that his association with Harry Potter was damaging his career prospects, and essentially disowned the people who had raised and loved him. This wasn't just a political disagreement. This was a family torn apart by conflicting loyalties and fundamental differences in worldview. Percy believed he was standing up for principles and order. His family believed he was abandoning them for personal ambition. Both sides were right, and both sides were wrong. For the next 2 years, Percy lived apart from his family. He worked long hours at the ministry, advanced his career, and convinced himself that he had made the right choice. But the cost was enormous. He missed family gatherings, important moments, and the simple joy of being part of the Weasley clan. Percy's loyalty to the ministry was tested in ways he never could have imagined. When Voldemort's return became undeniable, Fudge was forced to resign in disgrace. Percy then served under Rufus Scrimgeour, the new Minister for Magic, who was determined to project strength in the face of the growing threat. Under Scrimgeour, the ministry became increasingly militaristic and paranoid. Percy found himself implementing policies that were harsh, sometimes cruel, and always focused on maintaining the appearance of control. He helped coordinate security measures, managed communications, and supported efforts to track down and arrest suspected Death Eaters. But as the war intensified, Percy began to see cracks in the system he had devoted his life to serving. The ministry was losing the war, not because its employees weren't dedicated, but because the leadership was focused on politics rather than protection. They were more concerned with looking strong than actually being effective. When Scrimgeour was killed and the ministry fell to Voldemort's control, Percy faced the ultimate test of his principles. The organization he had served faithfully was now run by the very forces of darkness. It had claimed to oppose everything Percy had believed in. Order, authority, the rule of law had been corrupted and turned against innocent people. Percy watched as his colleagues were arrested, tortured, or forced to implement policies that violated everything the ministry was supposed to stand for. He saw Muggle-born witches and wizards stripped of their rights, children taken from their families, and the entire structure of wizarding society perverted into an instrument of oppression. For Percy, the breaking point came gradually, then all at once, as he watched the ministry implement increasingly horrific policies under Death Eater control. He began to realize that his faith in institutional authority had been misplaced. The system he had devoted his life to serving was not inherently good. It was only as good as the people who ran it. This realization was devastating for someone who had built his entire identity around institutional loyalty. Percy had to confront the possibility that his family had been right all along, that Harry Potter and Dumbledore had been telling the truth, and that his own choices had put him on the wrong side of history. But Percy Weasley was still a Gryffindor, and when he finally understood the truth, he found the courage to act on it. As the Battle of Hogwarts approached, Percy made the most important decision of his life. He chose to return to his family and fight for what was right. On May 2nd, 1998, as the final battle began, Percy appeared at Hogwarts alongside his family. He didn't send a letter, he didn't make a speech, he didn't try to explain himself. He simply showed up, ready to fight alongside the people he had abandoned. The Battle of Hogwarts was Percy's moment of redemption, but it came at a terrible cost. Fighting alongside his family for the first time in years, Percy experienced both the joy of reconciliation and the horror of war. He fought bravely, using his extensive knowledge of ministry operations to help the Order of the Phoenix coordinate their defense. But the moment that truly mattered wasn't about fighting. it was about family. When Percy first encountered his brother Fred during the battle, there was no time for lengthy apologies or explanations. There was only the immediate reality that they were family, fighting together for something greater than their personal conflicts. Fred Weasley, the twin who had tormented Percy throughout their childhood, who had mocked his ambitions and ridiculed his seriousness, made a joke. He actually made a joke about Percy's newfound willingness to break rules, and Percy laughed. For the first time in years, Percy genuinely laughed with his brother, and then, in an instant, everything changed. An explosion rocked the castle. When the dust cleared, Fred Weasley was dead, and Percy was holding his brother's body, devastated by a loss that could never be repaired. In that moment, Percy understood the true cost of his choices. He had lost years with Fred, years they could never get back. All the arguments about rules and rebellion, all the fights about ministry loyalty and family loyalty, all the pride and stubbornness that had kept them apart, none of it mattered in the face of this final, irreversible loss. So, who was Percy Weasley really? Was he the ambitious bureaucrat who chose career over family? Was he the misguided young man who fell for propaganda? Was he the redeemed hero who returned to fight for what was right? The answer is that he was all of these things, and that's what makes him such a fascinating character. Percy's story is ultimately about the danger of absolute loyalty to institutions rather than principles. He wasn't evil. He was someone who believed so strongly in the idea of order and authority that he couldn't see when those institutions became corrupted. His tragedy wasn't that he was ambitious, but that his ambition blinded him to the human cost of his choices. But Percy's story is also about redemption and the power of family love. When he finally understood his mistakes, he didn't make excuses or try to justify his actions. He simply came home and fought alongside the people who had never stopped loving him, even when they disagreed with his choices. Percy represents something that many of us can relate to: the desire to succeed, to be respected, to find our place in the world. His methods were flawed, his priorities were sometimes misplaced, but his underlying motivations were deeply human. He wanted to matter, to make a difference, to be valued for his contributions. After the war, Percy remained at the Ministry of Magic, but with a fundamentally different understanding of what service means. He had learned that true loyalty isn't blind obedience to authority. It's the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult, even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted. Percy Weasley's story teaches us several important lessons that extend far beyond the wizarding world. First, it shows us the importance of questioning authority, even when we benefit from it. Percy's mistake wasn't that he was ambitious, or that he valued achievement. It was that he stopped thinking critically about the institutions he served. Second, Percy's story demonstrates that success without relationships is ultimately hollow. He achieved everything he thought he wanted: prestigious positions, professional recognition, institutional respect, but it meant nothing when he was cut off from the people who loved him. Third, Percy's journey shows us that it's never too late to change course. Even after years of making wrong choices, even after burning bridges and hurting people, it's possible to acknowledge our mistakes and work to make things right. Redemption is always possible, but it requires genuine change, not just apologies. And finally, Percy's story reminds us that families are complicated, that love and conflict can coexist, and that sometimes the people who annoy us the most are the ones who need our understanding the most. The Weasley family never stopped loving Percy, even when they disagreed with his choices, and that unconditional love ultimately made his redemption possible. Percy's role in the Harry Potter series extends beyond his personal journey. He represents a crucial element of the wizarding world's political landscape. Through Percy, we see how ordinary people can become complicit in injustice, not through malice, but through excessive faith in authority and institutional thinking. Percy embodies the bureaucratic mindset that values procedure over people, policy over principle. He represents the well-meaning civil servants who implement harmful policies because they trust that their superiors know best, who prioritize institutional loyalty over moral judgment. His character arc parallels real-world scenarios where democratic institutions are gradually corrupted from within, where good people make bad choices because they can't imagine that the systems they serve might be fundamentally flawed. Percy's story is a warning about the dangers of unquestioning loyalty to authority. But Percy's ultimate redemption also shows us that individuals within corrupt systems have the power to resist, to change course, to choose principle over position. His decision to abandon his career and fight alongside his family represents the kind of moral courage that can help restore justice to corrupted institutions. So there you have it, the complete story of Percy Ignatius Weasley, one of the most complex and misunderstood characters in the Harry Potter universe. He wasn't a villain, but he wasn't a traditional hero either. He was something more interesting and more human, a person who made serious mistakes, learned from them, and ultimately found the courage to do what was right. Percy's journey from ambitious student to misguided bureaucrat to redeemed family member shows us that people are complicated, that good intentions can lead to bad outcomes, and that redemption is always possible for those willing to acknowledge their mistakes and change their behavior. Perhaps most importantly, Percy's story reminds us to value the relationships in our lives over our professional achievements, to question authority even when we benefit from it, and to remember that it's never too late to come home to the people who love us. What do you think about Percy Weasley? Do you see him as a villain, a victim, or something more complex? Have you ever found yourself choosing career over family, or institutional loyalty over personal relationships? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this fascinating character. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed this deep dive into Percy's story. Subscribe for more character analysis and Wizarding World content, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, remember that even the most misguided among us can find their way back to what matters most. Keep the magic alive, and I'll see you in the next video.